כי אתם ידעתם, עשר שישבתם בארץ מצרים, as you know, we dwelt in Eretz Mitzrayim. עשר שעברנו בקרב הגויים אשר עברתם, and we passed in the midst of the nations which you passed through. תסבוב רש"י, כי אתם ידעתם, כפי שראיתם הומוס עובדי עבודה זרה, ושמהסי לב אחד מכם עושה לכס אחריהם. You saw the nations worshiping the idols, and maybe one of you people, your hearts, was hasty, meaning was moved or influenced to follow after the idolatry. It's interesting. I mean, the word in Hebrew of Shema Hasi Leiv Echad Mikem. What does it mean, Hasi? Okay. We mentioned in the past, in parshas Truma, there were different categories of people who donated to the Mishkan. There was Asher Nodvu Libo, person who gave out of the generosity of his heart, and the one who was inspired by his heart. The word for inspired is Hasi. Asher Hasi Libo. Nodvu Rucho is the one who his spirit gave generously. There's generous and there's being inspired. So the Or Chaim HaKodesh explains that a person who's generous, to what degree is he generous? To the point where he feels he could give, but it's going to start infringing on his own needs. He's going to stop at that point. A person who's inspired to give, when a person is inspired, the person gives beyond his means. Why? Because the person is so taken by whatever that issue is, whatever that cause is, that cause becomes the primary focus. And the person himself loses sight of himself, becomes minimized because if he's so inspired, therefore a person gives beyond his means. Even, he says, a poor man will give like a rich man, because that's how important the cause is. That's the person who's inspired. Okay? A Jew. But what relevance does he have to idolatry? So, since you were in Egypt and you passed among the nations who are idolaters, maybe one of your hearts were inspired, you were touched in a way to follow after it. Therefore, HaKadosh Baruch Hu has to what? Has to adjure with the oath. You understand? This goes with the Ibn Ezra, that a person only aspires to something which is reality. But if a person himself understands it's not available, it's not a reality, you don't aspire to it anymore. Right? So over here, if HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives such serious consequences, if you go after idolatry, understand? Well, the door shut in your face. If that becomes your reality, that what you're going to have to suffer and the consequences and the negative ramifications of that kind of behavior, it's not even a consideration. So the moment it stops being a consideration, you don't desire it any longer, and you don't aspire to it because it's just not a reality. You know, a person aspires to have, he wants to have gold. There's not an ounce of gold that exists in existence. You know? But it's something that you want. It's all what you want. The person stops wanting it because the reality is, he understands, it doesn't exist. Vatiru es shukutseim veiskuleim. You saw the idolatry that was as detestable as rodents. Veiskuleim, and it was as disgusting as dung. As dung. That's how Moshe Rabbeinu was depicting the idolatry. Eitz va'even. You saw the idol made of wood and stone. Kesef zashimoim. But the silver and gold idol, that was in the privacy of their homes because they're afraid somebody's going to steal it. Got it.
Because the fact that we worship him.
No, we'll see Rashi why it's dung. What they worship dung.
No, but they
No, there they worshipped by defecating. Here,
defecate.
he's referring to the actual idol as dung.
Yeah, but maybe they're referring to as dung because
We'll
they
see.
were defecating.
Rashi. Vatire shukuseim al shem shem usim kishkotzim. Why is he referring to the idolatry as shukuseim? Because it says disgusting as rodents. Gileim shemusrochim muusim kegolo. It has a stench and as putrid as dung. Eitzu even osen sheletzu shelavonam risim begoloi. Fishein hagoy yori shem yigonvu. The goy is not concerned; they're going to steal his wooden and his stone idol. Avo shel kezu zov, but it's made of silver and gold, a precious metal. Imam bechedrim mashkisamhein. That they keep in their privacy over their inner rooms. Fishem yireim shem yigonvu. Because they're concerned they may be stolen. My mashgiach always used to say, Hashem is adjuring us with an oath and all the curses because you were exposed to idolatry in Egypt and on the way out among the various nations, you may be influenced by it. But if initially see something as putrid as rodents and as giving off the stench of dung, that's how disgusting it is, how could you be attracted to it? You know, you go to the landfill, it reeks so badly that you gag on, that's how bad it is. How could you go near it? You don't go near it. So if it's shikutzem huleim, but what's even the consideration? And that, if he's speaking to them that way, evidently that they see it that way also. So if you see it that way, what do you have to adjourn with an oath? It's understood you're not going near it. So he used to explain with a mashal. In Detroit, they weren't that advanced like New York. In New York, we used to have trains in the 50s that when the train cars would go, the shrieking and the sound was such that by the time you were 15, you could lose half your hearing. That's how deafening it was. They used to jolt. When you would sit on the seat, people would actually fall off the seats. That's how not smooth the ride was. The seats were made of straw that when you sit on the seat, it would pierce your pants and actually sometimes like lacerate your skin. This is the subway ride of New York City. And within 5 minutes, you saw people sleeping. With such noise and such jolting and such everything, how do you fall asleep? The answer is you get lulled. Once you're there, it's just a question of time. You get lulled into a certain pattern, a rhythm. And that's the human condition. We acclimate ourselves very quickly. You're exposed to something, after a short period, you stop seeing it the way initially you saw it. Initially, you see it as dung, something which has a stench. You're exposed to it a little bit longer, it starts blurring. It's not so terrible. Then you start asking questions. Why do the nations, we're the minority, the majority of the world, they do it with their pagans. What do they do it? Evidently, maybe there's something to it. And gradually, you get drawn into it. That's the way it works. It's interesting. Idolatry, there's certain things which are Yisur no, that you're not permitted benefit from. You're only not permitted benefit if it's derech hanoson. If you to benefit in the conventional way of benefiting. Let's say bas b'cholov. You're not permitted to benefit from it, right? What about? Bas b'cholov is not a good example. Orlo, the produce of the first 3 yields of a tree. Right? You're not permitted to eat. So it has to be derech achila. What about if you take the orlo and you use it and you rub it on your skin, which is not the normal way you benefit from it? On a Torah level, it's permitted. But idolatry, even shlok derech hanoson. Idolatry, whether it's the conventional way of benefiting, not the conventional way of benefiting, you're not permitted to benefit from idolatry. So let's say you go to the Museum of Natural History, and they show you the idols of the ancient Egyptians, and you admire the workmanship and this. You're not permitted. Because any degree of pleasure that you have, benefit you have, is forbidden on the Torah level. Not rabbinical, there's a Torah violation. No. But besides, what's the wisdom of the Torah? Because the moment a person sees something in a positive light, You never know where that's going to take you. It'll draw you. It draws you close to it. But if you're not, it's so detestable. It's so forbidden that God says even on an unconventional level, you're not permitted to have any benefit from it. You got to stay away from it. You admire architecture. You know, people go to Italy, they go to the Vatican, whatever, and they admire things there. Torah violation. You're not permitted. Besides going in there. There's nothing wrong. Just make sure nobody's standing next to you. You're not saying it. Is that the reason why they spit? Okay. I never had the conversation with a Chabadski. I couldn't tell you. But it's still, but the concept, it's not a good idea, because any degree of attraction you have. I remember I once went. What old?
50% of the Vatican Museum is the Old Testament. Moshe.
Whatever it is.
How many go into a Catholic hospital?
No, you can look at the idol. You don't benefit. There's nothing wrong with looking.
You're going to a Catholic.
Well, you have no choice. The hospital is not a place of worship. It's not a place of worship. The hospital is a hospital.
So it's not a place of worship.
You're allowed to go in there. I'm talking about admiring the idols. You know, you go to a museum. What are you going to a museum for? You're studying what was the culture, what was the civilization. Like even in the Israel Museum, you know, they have these icons of the Canaanite pagan nations. You know, if a goy is mevatel d'avodah zarah, if he nullified it, then it reverts back to an ordinary status. But these civilizations were destroyed. It was never. No. It was never nullified. It was buried under the ground, finished. That's what it was. So you find it still, even though we're going back 3,000, 4,000 years ago, it's still Yisrael. No, you're not permitted benefits from it.
Well, about the spitting, there was a custom in Poland where they used it to walk in front of the synagogue. They would spit. And I think it was because they were suffering so much from the Catholics.
So it was in front of the synagogue?
A church, I'm sorry.
There's a famous saying. The old city of Prague is the famous bridge. From the old city to the new city.
How much mileage Alan has on that trip? Still talking about it. Okay, let's hear about it.
So in the times of morale, whatever, so when morale was there, it was 50 good years for the Jews. But then he passed away, and there's another ruler with 50 years on. They sounded this, depending on what was going on. So there was a statue of Yoshka. The Jews used to go over the bridge, used to spit on it. So that the Goyim saw that. So they printed, I don't know if you ever saw it, but on that statue, they printed big letters, Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh. Shem's for it, so close. So the Jews wouldn't spit on it.
Smart.
Rabbi, how do you explain that? I always question that the Jews were so attracted by Avodah Zarah, and today we lost all the attraction to Avodah Zarah.
Mercies.
Yeah,
Because they prayed that it should be destroyed. The Yetzirah, the inclination of idolatry, shouldn't exist anymore.
And
Doesn't. Otherwise, it was ravaging us. During the whole first period of the Beis Hamikdash, the main sin was idolatry. That most Jews were pagans, and most pagan worship crossed over into adultery and incest. A lot of that went on. You read. I just read a few years ago in the Far East, like in the Himalayas, they have these whatever they call. They have these little. They're not people, Tibetans or whatever it is in the mountain. Incest. I mean, a brother's wife. This, that, all that means nothing. Means nothing. It's a way of life by them, and it's all connected to their. With the souls, and bringing the souls back, and this and that, all kinds of, it's part of their pagan worship. whatever it is. That's the reason when you find the Egyptians, when the mummies, their pictures, they're deformed. Because if there's so much inbreeding, incest, eventually they have all kinds of genetic defects.
Right.
And that's why you have pictures of them, what they look like. Their heads are, their faces, all that.
The U.S. government gets the more against the Amish. The Amish were big. They were very honest in saying manipulation and other genetic defects that they actually stepped in. They went in.
What, they had married sisters or
Yeah,
first cousins?
Cousins and, yeah, so they, it was a very
You find
inappropriate.
by Hasidic dynasties, they do it generation after first cousins, and you find in many of them, you find retardation and dementia and all this kind of stuff. You find it because of that.
But
Okay.
it's allowed, isn't it?
It's allowed. It's allowed.